Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're consuming this. And welcome to the Out of Practice podcast, helping newly qualified ACAs navigate the transition and life out of practice. I'm your host, Darren Spain, a former ACA student and now founder of 1-7 Partners. And today, I'm joined by somebody whose CV reads like a masterclass in high-impact finance leadership across some of the world's most recognized organizations. Claire Delicata is a seasoned CFO and interim finance executive who has led transformational change at companies like Vodafone, Farfetch, British Gas, Costa Coffee, and many more. Over the years, she's built and scaled finance teams, led systems upgrades, and partnered directly with CEOs and boards to steer billion-pound businesses through periods of growth, transition, and innovation. She started her career at EY and has since gone on to hold senior roles in tech, transport, utilities, retail, fashion, and telecoms. Whether it's IPOs, private equity environments, or group-wide performance transformation, Claire's been in the thick of it. I'm excited to dive into her story, explore how she navigated such a dynamic and varied career, and hear her insights on what it really takes to succeed in the top finance seats, especially for those just stepping out of audit and into industry for the first time. Claire, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much, Darren.
No worries. How are you today? You okay?
Yeah, good, thank you.
That's what
Yourself?
we like to hear. Yes, very well, my side. Thank you very well. Just obviously, we're just speaking off air, and I was saying that took little man to swimming today, which he thoroughly enjoyed. So always puts a smile on my face. So can't complain. But no, like I said, excited to dive into this, and thank you once again for agreeing to be a guest. Now, the way I've started the last two, it's not necessarily how I might start all of them, but perhaps who knows, is I'd just like to very quickly understand kind of what made you pursue the ACA and a career in audit, Claire?
Yeah, sure. So I really didn't know what I wanted to do after university, but I knew I always wanted to do something in business. So when I was at uni, I was at Southampton Uni doing a degree in economics. I went to the careers library to find out what the previous economics graduates did. And it turned out that about 80% of them went on to become accountants. So I thought I'd just look into that. And that's how I ended up in accountancy. It's that simple. There were a few events that were run at the university by Ernst & Young, as it was known back then, it's now EY, Price Waterhouse, which is now PwC. And I really liked the people that I met at both companies. So I just decided to apply for a traineeship at both, and I was offered a role at both companies. And in the end, I just picked EY partly because it meant I could return to my hometown because I had a small office there. But yeah, the people that I met at both were excellent. So yeah, I just felt really inspired to join the industry.
Nice. So funnily enough, you took the opposite route to me, because I also had offers from PwC and EY, but decided to go with PwC because they offered me in my hometown. So because EY moved my application from London to Luton, apparently I put Luton as my second choice for some reason, and I ended up being moved. And then when I got the offer, it's like, oh, you can start in Luton, and then PwC were like, we'll give you London. So yeah, I ended up joining PwC for the same reason as you, but the opposite end. Where was your hometown then?
Oh, it's where I still live. It's in Swindon in Wiltshire, so about an hour outside of the West of London. So yeah, it's a really good location for travelling, and all my family and friends are here, so it just made perfect sense, really. Nice.
And so how did you find your time at EY then, after making that decision?
Oh, it's good. It's hard to start off with, because going from being at university and being a student and be able to sort of study when you wanted, you'd have to turn up somewhere for like what's supposed to be 9 to 5, but often ended up much longer hours than that. Yeah, it was quite a struggle and quite a challenge to start off with. But the work itself was was interesting, and I think the struggle when you're studying is trying to juggle the study and getting all that done, and passing your exams and doing the audit work at the same time. That was sometimes meant a lot of hours of studying at the weekends and in the evenings, and trying to fit it all in so that I could pass the exams and just get through the traineeship, really. But yeah, really good experience overall.
Yeah. Now, obviously, off the back of that, multitasking and balancing priorities and multiple kind of projects at one time is definitely maybe an answer to this. But I mean, what lessons do you think audit taught you that you kind of stuck with you and that you've taken into your career to date?
Oh, I think that just the ability to check things and make sure numbers tie through. I know it sounds really mundane, but the rigour it gives you around making sure things are correct, and that there's no doubt as far as possible that the figures that you've got have got integrity. I think that carries through your career, really, whether you stay in finance or not. To actually be able to interrogate the numbers and what's going on, and does that tie up with what you know about the business. I think that's the experience that sort of stuck with me. I mean, I was lucky enough to have a couple of secondments during my time at EY as well, into tax and also out into industry, which is what led me to move into industry in the end. But yeah, so that sort of variety added to it as well. But yeah, the main takeaway, even when I was in tax and out in industry, was just to check everything and make sure things were right. And that's just stood me in good stead, really, for the rest of my career.
Yeah, yeah. So talk to me about that secondment then into industry. How did that come about? Where did you go? And talk to me about kind of how that all went, sorry.
Oh, I went to a company called SuperSnaps. I don't think they're trading anymore because it was to do with like sort of photographs, and people don't really print photographs anymore.
Yeah.
And so, but it was a fantastic secondment. They sent me to their group finance team, and the group financial controller was just excellent. And they were using Hyperion, which I liked working in Excel already, but Hyperion basically links up all the group accounts across a group basically of companies, and then you can see everything and pull all the information into Excel. And at the time I just thought that was mind-blowing. I really loved working with Hyperion and pulling together reports and seeing what the numbers said, so I just really enjoyed it. And they sent me there for a month to help out during year end, and I absolutely loved it. And it's that I went back to audit and I thought, oh, can't wait to finish now so I can go out into industry, because I enjoyed it. I mean, I liked audit, but I really loved being out on secondment out into industry. So yeah, really great experience. And yeah, I'd advise anyone who gets a chance to do it to do it, even if it feels a bit daunting because it's not audit and it's something a bit different. At least then you'll know whether it's for you, whether you like it, and whether that's a good move for you. Yeah, I was just very lucky to be given that opportunity.
Yeah. Now, that's not something, during my time in practice at PwC, I don't think that was something many people were doing at all, really. I mean, the fact that you said you did as a comment to me sounds a little, not surprising, but as I said, it's not something that many of us were doing during my time there. So I guess, how did that actually come about then? Were SuperSnaps, were they a client of yours at EY, or how did that actually come about then?
I don't know. Oh, they weren't even a client of mine. They were based down, I want to say near High Wycombe. I remember having to drive down to Junction 8-9. I'm based at Junction 15 on the M4, which if anyone's watching internationally, it's like one of the main roads into London. And so, yeah, I remember sort of driving down there every morning to go and help out. But I think they just needed a bit of extra resource at year end. And I don't know if they just had a very good relationship with Ernst & Young. And maybe just asked us, have you got anyone who could help out for a few weeks? And they put my name forward, which was really nice. So, so off I went for, I think it was about a month, maybe 6 weeks, to help them out, just pulling together schedules and, producing reports. It was just really good.
Yeah. And at what point during your audit career was this then? Because you were only at EY for 3 years, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I was lucky in that they fast-track my exams. So if you've got decent A-level grades, I think that's a marker that they use that you might be able to get through the exams quicker. They put you on the fast track. And so I did my first year exams. So the first 3 months I was at EY, everyone else went off to get some audit experience and did their exams in the summer. Well, not everyone else, there was a group of us that were fast-tracked. But generally people would sit their exams in the summer. But for the fast-track team, we had like three months. I think it was, actually 4 months, September, October, November. Oh, it's not December, yeah. Great accounting for accounting. Maybe like sort of 3.5 months, because I think the exams were in December. And basically, if you didn't pass your first year exams, the general rule of thumb back then was that you were out of a job. So if I'd failed those exams, I might not have even seen day one of audit, because the assumption was that the fast track team would pass the exams and then just go into the busy season in January. Now, luckily, I did pass the exams. Some of them, just about. The law exams, I think I only passed by averaging the 2 grades. I think you had to get, I think it's an average of more than 45. I think I just about managed it because I wasn't very good at law. But all the other exams, the numbers-based ones, I did just fine in. So managed to get through the first year exams. And as a result of that, every year I was sitting my exams early. They were sat in sort of, I want to say December rather than in June. And so that meant by my third year, I'd finished all my exams by the December in the third year. So we all started in, I think, September. And then that gave me a big stretch between January and the end of the contract, which was at the end of September, I think, or the end of August, to then be able to go out and help out on projects or do secondments. And that's what I did. I think the tax secondment from memory was in my second year. And again, it's because I'd finished the exams early, and so therefore I had a bit more time available during that following 9 months. And then it's the same in the final year. And I think that's how the opportunity came about. So I'd say if anyone feels confident, I felt confident at the time, but if you're reasonably good at exams and you get the opportunity to fast track them, it gives you a bit more bandwidth in your final year to do some, do a secondment, or if the opportunity is there, or to go and work on some projects, which was great. I was really lucky to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you for that. And then I guess obviously, as we touched on earlier, you spent 3 years in EY. Obviously, decided to make a move out of practice into industry. Did you go back to SuperSnaps, or did you go somewhere else? Oh, guys, very sorry. Just quickly, sorry to interrupt. Very quick. 2 things. Have you downloaded your free CV template yet? The one that was in the description below. It's still there. So, go ahead, download that. It's free. Second thing, I know I told you I'm the founder of 17 Partners, but I haven't told you what 17 Partners is. 17 Partners is a recruitment agency specializing in helping ACA qualified accountants transition and move out of practice into industry. So if you're looking to make a move out of practice, let's connect on LinkedIn. You can find me there, Darren Spain. Let's connect, send me a message, and let's see how I can help you. Let's get back into the episode.
No, I went to Vodafone, which again wasn't a client, and I hadn't worked in the telecoms industry. But Vodafone, the world headquarters, is still based along that M4 corridor again, that road into London, down in Newbury, which is about a 25-minute drive from where I live. So, given it's even back then it was one of the UK's biggest companies. I think it's probably one of the world's bigger companies now. Vodafone's grown. Grown
and they've just merged with 3 as well, haven't they?
I know, exactly. I've been bigger now, so. So it's a great place to start my career in industry, because they've just done the management transaction, so a big acquisition, and so there's lots of new entities coming in. I joined in group finance, so again, using the experience that I've got on this secondment at SuperSnaps. They used Hyperion as well, which was perfect, because I'd had some experience in that already. So it's a really good start to life in industry, and just a really interesting time dealing with all these overseas entities, trying to get commentary, trying to find out what was going on around the group, and pulling together the board pack with the other accountants that worked in that team. It was a great opportunity to move into industry, and I feel really lucky to have that opportunity, actually, because Vodafone's a terrific company to work for. I went back and worked for them again later in my career because I liked it that much there, and just great people, and the amount of learning you get from working with people that are that good, makes a huge difference then as you go through your career. No, brilliant. So we'll touch on kind of the fact that you've obviously been doing more contract-based work for the last few years or so, but before we tap onto that, that's obviously quite a big factor, I'd imagine, as to why you've worked in so many different industries, as I touched on earlier: tech, transport, utilities, retail, fashion, telecoms. Name an industry, Claire has worked in it, right? So just curious to, very quickly, which industry have you enjoyed working in the most, and why? Oh gosh, I'd say there's a couple of sort of themes in terms of the industries that I love working in. So I really enjoyed working in retail. Because I find the analysis that you do around what's going on is a lot more fast moving. You really get to see what the customers are buying. So I loved working at Costa Coffee for that reason, and also Farfetch and Superdry, because again, we're looking at what people are buying, where they're buying it from, what's trending. That's true in food as much in fashion, in terms of what's popular with people. And I found that really interesting. So I love working in retail. But a lot of my background is in technology and telecoms and manufacturing. So anything where you're involved in something that's high growth, I always find really fascinating. So when I first joined the mobile industry, very few people started to get mobile phones, but they were still brick size. They were quite big. I remember I had my first orange phone as a trainee accountant, and it was huge. Nothing like the phones you get these days. It certainly didn't have the internet on it. I remember when I worked at Vodafone, we had some of the first phones that had where you could sort of take I think it's a photo. I can't remember if you could take a video on it, but that was radical back then. Share my age, but that was like, wow, we can take photos and send photos on our phone. We couldn't access the internet. And back then, if you wanted to send an email, you'd have a BlackBerry. A RIM BlackBerry would be the business tool where you'd get into your email inbox and be able to message people. But the world's changed since then, and I think working in those industries where you're going through that massive level of change, I find really interesting, trying to keep up with what's happening and the opportunities. Where do you then invest if you're in an industry that's growing? And that's the same in coffee retail as it was in technology. Where do you place those bets? What are the best parts of the market to go into? Where do you expand globally? What products do you take there? That I found really interesting, and that's true. Both like sort of technology and in retail. These are you end up looking at the same strategic questions. I think from a commercial and strategy point of view. So I've enjoyed those industries the most. I mean, there's some industries that I enjoyed less, and this is just me personally. I didn't really enjoy financial services. I found it a little bit dry. It was very sort of numbers on numbers. The people in financial services are lovely, by the way, so you get to work with some really nice people, but the actual substance, what you're actually looking at, just didn't really, some industries make you feel, sort of really interested in. Other things are just less in. I think it just depends on the individual. I know a lot of people who work in, financial services who love it and they're really happy there. So horses for courses, I think.
This is it. Now, curious as well then, I mean, obviously you've my last episode I sat down with Tom Williams, who has spent the last few years in the recruitment industry, right? And he meant we were having a brief conversation around the benefits of sticking to one industry. Obviously, you can quote unquote specialize and kind of take your specialist knowledge with you the higher up in your career you go. I guess on the flip side, from your side, where you have, I know you said obviously you spent quite a bit of your experience in telecoms, for example, and manufacturing. But how do you go about kind of, and how do you approach learning kind of new sectors each time you did kind of move from one to the other?
A lot of the fundamentals in accountancy and finance are the same wherever you go. Sort of not all companies will have stock, like inventory. You'd only really get that in manufacturing and retail. In telecoms, you'd have capex instead, really. But a lot of the things you're looking at are the same. The way you'd analyse a P&L, same. Cash flow, same, wherever you go, really. So, what we do in finance is very easily portable from one industry to another. I think, though, in terms of what the previous podcast guest said, though, in terms of picking an industry, I think there is merit in that, because what I found is that once you're in an industry, because you've got experience in that industry, if people need someone with experience in that industry, they'll hunt you out because they're like, oh, actually, Claire's got telecoms experience. I'm working on a telecoms client. If this is like the recruiter, I'll phone Claire because she's got telecoms experience already. So what I would say to anyone who's newly qualified is think about what industry you'd want to work in for the next 20, 30, 40 years, depending on how long you decide to work in finance, or even if you're moving out of finance. The industry that you pick early on in your career, I think, unless you make a big transition or something happens mid-career, you will generally end up working in that industry and you will build on that knowledge. And the longer you stay in an industry, I've seen other people who've worked in retail spend their whole life in retail, and I think it's a bit of a generalism, but as if I look at people who've done really well in retail, they've generally worked in retail for quite a long time. Not sort of mixed industries like I've done. I've done it for different reasons, but if you get the opportunity to work in an industry that you like, I'd say create that opportunity. Don't wait for the opportunity to come to you. You need to pick the industry that you want to work in and then go and look for a role in that industry. Otherwise, you're just leaving your career to the wind. You're basically leaving it to chance. And you need to have some agency here. You need to drive this and actually pick what industry you want to work in, and then go and look for those opportunities, and they will be there.
No, brilliant advice. Thank you. And I guess as well, curious, what kind of clients were you working on at EY? Was it quite a broad mix of industries?
Very broad mix. It's quite lucky. Where Swindon is, so it's in Wiltshire, so it's a bit rural. Swindon itself isn't, but the surrounding areas. So I had there was like a wheat mill. So I was in a mill. I remember there was one client that I think they had bulls that they were sort of breeding for sort of various purposes, and I went out and audited them. The little bulls were really cute. I'm doing a stock count on them. Sometimes the Reading office would borrow me to work on some of their clients, and so worked on all sorts of different clients during my time in at EY. So it's a great training ground, because that then meant I could either go and work for a small company if I wanted to, or a bigger company. And I think for me, I just preferred working on the bigger clients. And so therefore, when I was looking at where to move after qualifying, I focused on large companies, blue chip companies, because I felt that for me, it would give me better opportunities and more progression. And again, I think, there's something to be said in the type of company, a size company that you pick. You probably end up working for similar companies. I think the only reason I got the opportunities to work at places like Costa Coffee and British Gas and other FTSE 100 companies is because I worked at a FTSE 100 company early on in my career. So again, I'd say to the viewers to have a think about what sort of size companies do you really enjoy working in? Do you want to work in a bigger company, or do you want to work in smaller companies? And again, pick carefully, because that will guide where you sort of end up to some extent for your career. I mean, you can move from a small company to a large company to a small company, but it just sets the wheels in motion. It gives you momentum in that direction.
Yeah, yeah. I can't say I ever went on stock counts to count balls, but mine were always it was always restaurants. I was always just counting like alcohol and meat and stuff. Well, not yeah, but never live balls, which sounds quite interesting. And so I guess with that, then, were there ever kind of any roles or sectors where you felt kind of out of your depths, and if so, how did you kind of handle that then?
Oh, not whilst I was in audit. I mean, the thing is, the first year in audit is also new. You feel completely out of your depth anyway, because you've just started. And then the second year, you go back in and you're familiar. You generally work on the same clients the second year, and so it's a bit more familiar. You don't feel too daunted by it then. And then by the third year, it's almost like, oh, we've seen this twice already. I've seen last year and the year before. You kind of know what's going on. So I don't think that feeling of like sort of not be able to sort of get to grips with stuff really. It really happened during the audit career. Ernst & Young did a very good job as well, I think, of making sure that you was well supported and that you had the tools you needed and you weren't being thrown in at the deep end. Give you challenging work, but wouldn't leave you struggling, which was good. And maybe that's because I had very, very good managers as well. I was very lucky in that regard as well. I think when I was out into industry, the bits where when I feel out of my depth, I think when I worked at Legal & General and had to get my head around like annuities and some of the different metrics, that was just, I didn't fully understand all the actuarial stuff, and that made me feel a little bit out of my depth because it was so new. And so I think potentially for people move out into industry, into an industry I've not worked in before, but one they're interested in, there is a bit of a learning curve, and you just have to trust then some of the information that you're getting from the specialists in those areas. You can interrogate it and think, does this make sense? Does this stack up? But you need to have a level of trust then with team members to make sure that the information you're getting is correct. But I mean, that's what teamwork's all about, isn't it? You're not expected to know everything on day one all at once. So but again, the team there were ever so kind and explained all the terms that I didn't understand. And by the end of it, I knew what all the acronyms were, and I felt on top of it. And it was
brilliant.
It was a good experience overall.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And so, Claire, why did you kind of decide, I guess, relatively early on in your career then that you were going to, well, I'm assuming it was a conscious decision. If not, please feel free to correct me. But why did you decide early on to kind of go down the kind of interim/contracting route by the looks of things?
This was an accidental career move. I don't think it's worked out too badly. But basically what happened is I was working in a project team in the group team at Vodafone. So they asked me back to look after broadband planning globally, which was a great role. I worked in the role sat in the global marketing team. We did quite a lot of work. We looked at like opportunities to acquire companies. I helped get the reporting set up in Hyperion again, back in my favourite group system. I got to work with lots of different people, and it's just it's a really good role. But towards the end of it, I was just running out of work. I remember saying to my boss at the time, so I just don't feel that busy. Is there anything else I can help out with? Or if there isn't enough work in this team, is there like another team I could move to? I was always quite honest, and I always think honest is the best policy. But maybe it's not sometimes, because what happened then is that the role was made redundant because there wasn't enough work to do, and there was no roles to go into. And of course, in my younger days, that'd be somewhere to move into in Vodafone, because Vodafone's massive and it's always growing. But I think I just had a round of like restructuring in the UK, and at that point in time, there wasn't somewhere to move to, so I ended up sort of leaving the company. And this was during the credit crunch of like 2008, 2009, and no one was recruiting. I was like, this is just bad luck really, or bad judgment, depends which way you look at it. Maybe I should have just quietly sat there being not too busy, but I couldn't do that. That feels like I'd have a sense of like a lack of integrity to sit there and not feel like I was delivering true value. And so I ended up looking on job boards online, and I think I still got a folder on my Hotmail that's basically got the big job search, I think I called it. And just like you just have to get on the phone in that situation. You just get on the phone, and you get on email. But preferably get on the phone, because it's better to speak to people, I think. And you just phone people up about roles. You've seen a role on GapWeb, phone them up. Seen something on LinkedIn, just phone them up. And that was what I basically spent a couple of months doing. And then in the end, this role came up through a recruiter. I'm still in touch with a chap called Brian, who's now at another company. But it came up through Brian, and he said, I've got this role at Legal & General. It's a maternity cover. Would you be interested in it? I said, potentially. I'll have a look. And so, they offered me the role, and I worked there for 9 months until the lady who was on maternity leave came back. And it was a good gap filler. So I'd say if anyone finds themselves in a situation where their role's been made redundant or something's happened such that they need to find a new role, it is worth looking at interim work, because you can get some new experience, quite often in a different industry, and it's good. And that's why I've ended up doing interim work on and off really throughout my career. If an opportunity's come to an end and the right permanent opportunity isn't available straight away, I would rather be busy doing something on an interim basis, learning something new, than sat at home waiting for the right permanent opportunity. I just don't think it's a good use of your life to spend months on waiting for the right permanent role. To crack on with something, just be useful. Remember, my nan always used to say to me, make yourself useful, and I think that's true. It's like, just try and do something useful and interesting, and good things will come out of it. And quite often on the interim roles, quite often it leads to permanent opportunities. So at Costa Coffee, I originally joined as interim head of corporate development, which I absolutely loved. Still been one of my favourite roles to date. And they really like my work. And I really like the Costa, actually. The team there were lovely. And they asked me if I'd stay on as a finance director in one of the business units. And I said, yes, I would, actually. That'd be great. So I went permanent there for a couple of years. Then there was a bit of restructuring, so I left Costa, and then ended up going to Superdry on an interim basis. I just needed a bit of help for a few months. And then Telecom needed help for a few months. So they were looking for an FP&A director, so I went and helped then. And then after that, I then went to do an interim role at Laird, and then went permanent at Laird. It was a FTSE 250 PLC. But again, they offered me a fabulous role. They made me vice president of commercial finance. And so I had a team of about 90 people. It was a global team, so I had to travel to the US and Shanghai and South Korea. And it was fantastic. I love that role. It was really good.
That sounds pretty exciting, to be fair.
and the people there were great. My boss there, Tony Quinn, was fantastic, and as was the whole exec team. So these things just work out in the end. And I think just take the opportunities that come up. If you look at it and think, I'd really like to do it, just go for it, and then see what comes out of it. And so that's really how I've ended up with the moves that I've made to date. And it's been good, I think. Overall, I've had a really nice mix of industry experience in different industries and different roles. And I think all of the experience you get, it all stacks. People talk about a skill stack in terms of like stacking your skills on top of each other to make your contribution more valuable. But I think to some extent there's a level of like industry stacking going on my CV as well, where there's like different things I can take from one industry to another, to sort of help build something better for the client or the employer that I'm working for.
100%. Now, I'm just curious as well then, because you some of the advice you just gave there was, if your time at a certain company is coming to an end, for example, instead of just sitting around and obviously just waiting for the next perm, maybe seek out the opportunity to do some interim work and kind of put your skills to use, if you like. Now, what's interesting is that I speak to a lot of candidates who are actually very scared to do that, because they feel that if they take maybe one too many interim opportunities, they're going to be classed as an interim employee, and therefore permanent hiring managers don't look at them anymore. And unfortunately, I've witnessed that myself, where somebody may have had to take a few contracts because perm opportunities just haven't come their way, or they just haven't had the luck of the draw in that regard. And the hiring manager will say, well, no, because we're just worried that they'll just leave after they find the next interim opportunity, because obviously for some of them, they could be, people seeing them as a bit more, I guess, lucrative, if you like. But obviously it comes with this, downsides in terms of security, etc. But what would you say to kind of people who are thinking maybe it might not be a good thing? I know you just said to advise that they do look at that, but with that context, what would you say?
I'd say there's definitely a grain of truth in that. If you do a lot of interim work, then some permanent recruiters or permanent clients will look at you and go, how do we know you're going to stick around? And I think to that, I'd just say, look at the amount of time I spent at Toyota. I was there for 3.5 years. Look at when I was at Vodafone, first time around I was there for 4 years, and there's definitely, sort of spots in my CV, Costa Coffee, I was there for about 3 years. So, yeah, plenty of roles where I've done. I mean, I'm quite old now. I've been in finance for more than 25 years, but over the years, it hasn't all been like 6 months here on this interim assignment or 9 months there. Yeah, there's been quite a few roles where, I've been there for years. And also, even with some of the interim roles, you can get extended. So British Gas was originally brought in to be the finance director for the business-to-business division. It's about a 2 billion turnover business unit. And then they had someone moving across from the permanent team into that role. But it's just like sort of getting the moves done at the right time. Now, people moving out and people moving in. This is often the case in big companies. And so when they moved across, they then had another project they wanted me to help out with, which was clearing some debt down on the ledgers. So managed to, and that role I enjoyed, managed to collect in sort of millions of pounds of debt that hadn't been collected with the credit control team. So that was a fun project. And then I did a good job on that. They asked me to do another project after that. So I was helping out the connected home team, that had like sort of Hive as a product down in London. And so, one thing quite often leads to another. And I think in the end, I was at British Gas for just under 2 years. And it's only because towards the end, the work that I was doing was quite straightforward. And again, I'm always very honest with clients. If I think they can bring in someone more junior to do the role, and there would be no loss of productivity or continuity, generally I'd quite often recommend that, because for me personally, I don't want to get stuck doing something where I don't feel my skills are being fully used, but also for the client. If there's a less expensive resource that can do that work for them, I will always flag that. Again, it goes back to having integrity and being honest, in the work that you do. So that's how these things have normally ended up. But generally, in my career I've been open to permanent and interim opportunities, depending on the time of that point in time, really. In terms of if I'm looking for an opportunity, I will look at interim and permanent roles. And so I'd say if someone's like in a situation where they haven't got a job, I'd say be flexible. You're absolutely right there, Darren. It can be quite lucrative being an interim contractor, particularly if you set up a limited company, and if you're working what they call outside of IR35. So if anyone's thinking of doing contract work, definitely look into potentially setting up a limited company and the outside IR35 regulations. So that's basically where you work like a consultant, so you're not like an employee. Well, you're not an employee anyway if you're a contractor. But if you are looking at going down that route, it's definitely worth looking into. And even though I'm an accountant, I'd say get a good contractor accountant that specialises in that area to help you with that. Which is what I do. I don't do my own limited company books. I get specialists to do those for me.
Yeah. And just very quickly on that, I guess I'll just say to the listeners that in terms of the kind of pros and cons, if you like, so as you mentioned, it can be lucrative, but the reason for that is because you forgo things like your benefits, you forgo sometimes holiday pay, etc. And obviously you're on a contract which could be on a day rate, and so you could be there for a matter of weeks or a couple months, or you could be on a fixed term contract, which sometimes you do have more of the kind of permanent type benefits. But on a day rate, for example, you're certainly foregoing a lot of those, and therefore you're compensated a little bit better for that, if you like. But as Claire said, obviously you might want somebody to help you look after your finances and your taxes, etc., as you are brought in on a consultancy basis. Although if you're brought in within IR35, it could be you're a bit more like an employee, which would be the case there. But no, brilliant. And so I guess just thinking, obviously you Claire have obviously progressed in your career. You've got to senior levels within finance. I mean, what do you find changes about the way you have to think about your role, kind of the more senior and you get it within your career?
I think in terms of the responsibilities you get are different. So if you're managing a team, you have to think about the team and their progress as well. I'm very big on making sure that my teams are, as far as I can, well looked after, and that I've got good career opportunities, and that's really important to me. I like to see nothing more than people in my team get promoted and move jobs, ideally internally, but if not, even externally, to see that they've grown and developed and managed to move forward in their career actually brings me real joy. I really like that part of my role. So that's definitely, once you start managing teams and then managing directors that have got teams underneath them, then it changes again. The level of profile and visibility you've got in the organisation changes. So you have to I mean, as a chartered accountant, anyway, you've got to think about your conduct anyway and how you carry yourself in business. I'd say, you know, there's other parts of other functions of the business maybe that aren't under that same pressure. That's definitely something bearing in mind as you grow and progress through your career. But yeah, that changes over time as well. But then certainly in terms of like the content of what you're looking at, it does seem to get, in my experience, more strategic. The more senior you get, you know, you'll be looking at market opportunities like M&A, you know, post-acquisition integrations, selling off business units, looking for opportunities to, you know, sell business units if they aren't performing and helping the business manage that. So, so yeah, those are you end up with more of a helicopter view over what's going on, and part of the, you know, there's a sort of, yeah, it's a privilege to be in that position, but there's like sort of responsibilities in there as well. You know, if you've got that level of view, you need to be basically looking across the industry and, you know, looking for opportunities for the organisation you work for. And that's the main difference, I think, once you get, certainly beyond director level, once you're up at, you know, sort of vice president or CFO or deputy CFO level, you know, that's more of your role, really.
Yeah. And speaking about M&A and having a holistic view, obviously you mentioned earlier that you spent some time as within an FP&A function. I mean, how did you find that transition from what you were previously doing, assuming you didn't have much of an FP&A background to you, to moving into that position? And the reason I ask, because I get a lot of questions about how can I move into FP&A with kind of my audit background, if you like.
I'd say it'd be quite difficult to move into FP&A straight from audit, so don't want to sort of dampen anyone's enthusiasm for going into FP&A. But,
don't worry, that's the answer I give everybody, don't worry.
But, you know, what can you do as a newly qualified, you know, person moving out of practice, you know, if you want to move in that direction of travel? Definitely, you know, sort of start learning about financial modelling. You probably wouldn't have had that experience as a trainee. You know, start learning how to build out financial models. Brush up on your Excel skills, like really brush up on your Excel skills, because you'll need to be able to produce, good integrated models, like 3-statement models, you know, cash flow, balance sheet, and P&L. Learn how to build those. You won't be taught that as a trainee, but you will need that as you move through your career if you move into FP&A. And I mean, these days, you know, it's a lot easier than it was when I was sort of learning. You've got great resources online now. There's courses on Udemy, you know, by some really well respected like professors, you know, particularly some of the US professors that teach all these things. So even if people haven't had the opportunity to work for, say, an investment bank and learn how to value companies and model out their forecasts, you know, you can get up to speed on that stuff pretty quickly. Yeah, and it's not just, I mean, Udemy is one of the least expensive routes. YouTube's free, you know, there's plenty of content out there. And so I'd say just try and follow a few people whose work are being published on these platforms, and say treat yourself to a few courses. Some people might not think that's a treat, but, you know, invest in yourself. You know, just buy a few courses, you know, to build up your skills and experience in areas that interest you.
Yeah. No, brilliant. Thank you for that. And that brings us very nicely onto kind of like the last segment being kind of general advice to newly qualified ACAs. And so the first question is kind of, what do you think should be the main thing or kind of high in a newly qual's consideration when they are looking to make a move out of practice?
I think really try and think hard. I know it's difficult when you're young about where you want to end up. Yeah, the number of people I speak to, in my teams, and I say, well, yeah, where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years' time? And they really don't know. They're like, oh, I just want to keep progressing. It's like, yeah, but progress to where? Where are you trying to get to? You know, and that is the thing. I think, you know, try and have a long, you know, zoom out. You know, try and have a longer term view of what does good look like for you. 'Cause remember when I was younger, you know, people would say to me, oh, do you think you'll be a CFO of like a FTSE 100 one day? Because I worked in large companies. And my answer was always like, oh, I doubt it, because there's only 100 of those jobs by definition in the country. And what's the chance of me getting one of those? But if I was to speak to my younger self now, I'd be like, go for it. What experience do you need to get to be, you know, in that example, a FTSE 100 CFO? And go out and build that experience. And the nice thing now is on LinkedIn, you can find people who are doing those jobs. So you can actually work backwards and work out, well, what did they do to get to that job? I couldn't do that back then. Back when I was newly qualified, we did not have LinkedIn. LinkedIn came out a few years later. I was at AOL when someone sent me an invite to connect on LinkedIn. I was like, what the hell is this? So I was very, very suspicious about the whole thing. But you've got great tools now, you know, so have a think about where you want to end up and set yourself a goal. You know, just say, right, ultimately, yeah, at this point in time, you can change direction, but at least then it gets you thinking about, yeah, what experience do I need? What moves do I need to make, you know, at each stage? And how long do I want to spend in each role? yeah, I'd say don't get stuck doing the same thing year in, year out, unless you really enjoy doing that. I think if you decided that is your life and you have found a role that you absolutely love, and I know people who've done this, not everyone can keep progressing to be like a CFO or an FD. I know people who are technically brilliant who love the stuff they do, and if that's you, then that's your dream role. And it's like everyone's got a dream, and different people have got different dreams, right? So I think that'd be my first piece of advice, is focus on where you want to end up. And then, secondly, just start speaking to people. Just start reaching out, whether that's online or LinkedIn, or phoning people up if you can get their numbers, and just start making inquiries really to get you on your way. It's but take ownership. Don't rely on stuff coming to you. Otherwise, you're going to be ending up doing stuff that comes to you rather than stuff that you go to. You need to pick what you want to do.
I like the fact that I like how you put that, because that's actually part of the reason why I started this platform and this podcast, because I was always finding when I was in practice that people were only just really, because they were just so desperate to leave, and because you spend 14, 15, maybe sometimes even more hours of your day either studying or working on long audits, they just didn't really have time to think about what their move was afterwards. And then they qualify, and then what happens is, because they've qualified and they've announced on LinkedIn they qualify, they get approached by recruiters, and they really just take the first thing that comes to them. And so that's why I wanted to start this platform, because I wanted to help people understand their options before they actually made that move, if you like. So no, I like how you put that. So Claire, also, I'm going to probably ask the next two questions in one because they may intertwine. But so the first one was, for newly qualified accountants making their first move, what early career habits or mindsets do you think separate the good from the great? And then the second question, because as I say, your answer may be intertwined here. Obviously, you've led large finance teams. So what qualities do you look for when hiring newly qualified accountants into your teams?
A really good question. So in terms of, actually progressing, I think always just aim to be excellent. Just aim to do a first-rate job of everything, and just try to solve problems. If your boss needs something done and you can help out, try and fix stuff for them. To get stuff done would be my advice. So don't just show up, actually get stuff done. And that's, I think, the key differentiator between those that get ahead and those that just end up doing the same thing every day. And then in terms of managing people. So the second question, in terms of sort of what I've forgotten the second question. That's really bad.
No, that's right. It was just what you would look for, basically. Kind of what qualities do you look for? Yeah, what qualities do you look for in newly qualified accountants?
So the quality I'd look for is generally drive and energy. If I'm recruiting, I normally go through the CVs and look for generally solid grades. Although that, I know people who've sort of had like a less than great start in their academic life go on to do great things. But generally, if I had like 200 CVs to sift through, I'd go for the ones that have got solid progression to start off with. And then then looking for genuine enthusiasm for why they want to make the move. As you said, like some people are just moving out of desperation rather than inspiration. They're moving because they can't wait to get out of audit. And I don't want those people. I want people who actually actively want to come and do a role in my team. And really that's what they want to do. I want them to feel excited about that role, that industry, coming to work with the people in my team and me, hopefully. And so those are the things that I really sort of look for, and also try and pick people that I think are going to be a credit to the team, that I can imagine doing good work, and that I think other people in the organisation will enjoy working with as well. So it's not just about, are they going to be good finance colleagues, but could I put them in front of the sales director? Could I send them off to go and speak to the operations manager? So those interpersonal skills and communication skills I think are really important as well.
No, brilliant. Thank you. And this is my last question before the quick fire round. But curious on this one, because this is actually just more of a question out of selfishness, because I'm just very curious. But you obviously mentioned how towards the start of your career, you just mentioned there around LinkedIn, and the first time you got a message via AOL about joining LinkedIn, your first BlackBerry phone that you used in the workplace, etc. So you've seen quite a few, I guess, technological advancements over your career. Obviously, we're currently living through quite a huge one, I'd say, being AI. It would be kind of remiss of me not to at least ask one person on this podcast about their thoughts on AI and kind of the conversations they're having around how it might shape the future of accounting and the profession, if you like.
I'd say you just got to embrace the change. Whenever any change comes up, just embrace it. So I'm going to a seminar next week actually on AI and its its role in finance. The sessions for like FDs and CFOs that I've been kindly invited to attend. And so if you get an opportunity to find out about these things, I use ChatGPT quite a bit. I'll quite often ask ChatGPT for its advice. Whether what comes back is any good or not is another thing. But sometimes it comes back with good stuff. You've got to filter it. But I think sort of going forward, the way that AI is going to be able to sort of help finance is to help with the automation of things. And you're starting to get like sort of autonomous AI now, where it can actually make decisions and do things. And so that I think is really interesting. And I think actually it's a good opportunity, for people. Certainly here in the UK, a lot of roles, the more straightforward finance work, has been offshored over time. But with AI, the offshored work might just disappear, and it might just be done by computers. And so, those people that really understand AI and actually, can organise AI and talk to AI and actually get AI doing stuff and doing it correctly as well. That's always the struggle, isn't it? As I said, Matt, you've got to filter out AI, mate, but it's improving and it will improve. And so I'd say get on the bus with AI. I think, you need to really start thinking about how that could be a useful tool. You've got like even like sort of automation within things like the Microsoft tools has got a lot better over the last couple of years. So these are all things that particularly if you want to go into industry, if you can start looking how that might be leveraged, that could give you a real edge. I don't think a lot of people are leaning into it. I think a lot of people go, a bit worried about AI, it might steal my job. It's like, well, AI might help you get your next job. It's like, how do you frame it? It's all about that mindset, really.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you for your thoughts there. I've just got very quickly a quick fire round of questions to fire at you, and then we're done. I greatly appreciate your time. You've been very generous with it. I might have to start making these calls block out an hour in people's calendars because the half an hour is clearly not working. But just very quickly, if that's okay with you, Claire.
Of course.
Brilliant, thank you. So, if you weren't in finance, what would you be doing?
I was originally looking at going into journalism because I like reporting on stuff. So yeah.
Interesting. What's the first thing that you do at your desk every morning?
Apart from make a cup of coffee, generally check my diary and make sure I know what's coming up in the day. Yeah.
Obviously, I can see you're working from home now, unless your office is very homely. But work from home or office vibes?
Mixture. I like being in the office occasionally, but not every day.
Okay, I'm going to start banning people from saying that because that's the answer I've had each time. What's your favourite way to switch off after work?
Sometimes just going for a run is nice, and I'll just get a change of scene. Just getting away from the desk is how I switch off.
Yeah, nice. What's the most underrated skill in finance in your opinion?
Oh, that's really hard. Communication, I'd say.
Okay, yeah, nice. Most overrated buzzword in business?
That's hard. There's so many buzzwords. People who say they let's take this offline. That really annoys me.
Hopefully, we get to a point where people have heard people complain about that one enough that people stop saying it, because surely in 2025 people are not still saying it. But hey, one thing you always look for in a CV?
Progression. Yeah, progression and energy. Yeah.
Cool. Dream holiday destination?
Oh gosh, I've been all over the world. Where's the dream? I love going to the US actually, because the people are so positive over there. Yeah, so anywhere in the US has been great.
Nice. I've knowingly not been as an adult. I went twice as a child, but not been as an adult yet. I do need to change that. And final one, any final words or advice for newly qualified ACAs looking to make their first move out of practice?
Oh, just be positive and go for what you want to go for. The world really is your oyster as a newly qualified coming out of practice. You've got so many opportunities. It's difficult to go wrong. So just go for it. Yeah.
No, brilliant. Thank you so much, Claire. As I say, you've been very generous with your time. I do greatly appreciate it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and know that the listeners will take a lot of value from this one. So thank you for sharing all that you've shared with us today. And let's keep in touch. Wishing you all the best. Let's keep in touch, and I'll let you get on. I know I've taken a lot more of your time than I promised.
No worries. Probably my fault for talking away too much. But I really appreciate it, Darren. Thanks for inviting me on your podcast.
No, thank you. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Out of Practice podcast and took away some value from that. If you did, be sure to let me know by smashing that like button and subscribing to the channel. Let me know in the comments below if there are any questions you'd like me to ask any future guests, and I'll be sure to do so. Don't forget also, in the description below, you can find a link to download a free CV template. Make sure you go ahead and get yours. And if you're a recently or newly qualified ACA chartered accountant looking to make a move out of practice, then let's connect on LinkedIn. I'm the founder of 17 Partners, a recruitment agency specializing in helping ACA qualified accountants transition and make a move out of practice into industry. So connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me a message, let's schedule a call, and let's see how I can support you make your next move.